The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning that changed everything. Zara Thompson stood in her small apartment kitchen, still wearing her teaching clothes from the day before, staring at the official envelope that had been slipped under her door. The return address made her heart stop. Blackstone, Meyer and Associates Estate Attorneys. Inside, the words swam before her eyes. Her father, Robert Caldwell, the man who had thrown her out at 18 for marrying against his wishes, was dead. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what came next. He had left her everything. $5 million. A mansion in the hills. Investment properties. Stock portfolios. Everything he had built during their 10 years of silence was now hers. Zara sank into her second-hand chair, the letter trembling in her hands. She remembered that last fight with her father like it was yesterday. He had screamed at her, called Blake a nobody, said she was throwing away her future for a man who would never amount to anything. She had screamed back, defending Blake, saying love was more important than money. How wrong she had been about Blake. How right her father had been. Blake had left her exactly 1 year after that fight. No explanation, no goodbye. Just empty closets and a note that said he needed space to find himself. That space had lasted 10 years. 10 years of silence while she struggled to pay rent on her teacher's salary. 10 years of wondering what she had done wrong. Her phone buzzed with a text from her principal. Hope you're feeling better. See you tomorrow. She had called in sick, unable to face her third-grade classroom after receiving news of her father's death. But it wasn't grief that kept her home. It was shock. And guilt. And the strange feeling that her entire life had just been turned upside down. The lawyer, Mr. Blackstone, wanted to meet with her that afternoon. There were papers to sign, properties to inspect, accounts to transfer. Zara looked around her cramped apartment, the peeling wallpaper, the broken air conditioner she couldn't afford to fix, the stack of bills on her counter she had been avoiding. She had spent 10 years proving she could survive without her father's money. 10 years living paycheck to paycheck, shopping at thrift stores, driving a car that broke down monthly. She had been proud of her independence, even if it was exhausting. Now that independence felt pointless. Her father had been watching. Waiting. And in the end he had given her everything anyway. The letter mentioned a personal note. She found it at the bottom of the envelope, written in her father's careful handwriting. Zara, I know you hate me. I know I was wrong about many things. But I was right about Blake. I hope by now you see that too. This money comes with no conditions except one. Use it to build the life you deserve. The life I should have helped you build 10 years ago. I'm sorry. Dad. Tears fell onto the paper before she could stop them. He had known. Somehow he had known about Blake leaving. Had he been keeping track of her all these years? Had he known about her struggles and chosen not to help, waiting instead for her to learn some lesson about pride and independence? The anger came fast and hot. How dare he? How dare he watch her struggle and do nothing? How dare he die before she could confront him about Blake, about being right, about letting her suffer to prove a point? But underneath the anger was something else. Relief. For the first time in 10 years she could breathe. She could fix her car, move to a better apartment, maybe even take a vacation. She could stop choosing between groceries and electricity. She could live. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Zara? Baby, is that really you? The voice made her blood freeze. Deep, familiar, with that slight accent he had never been able to shake. The voice that used to whisper, I love you, and had last said, I need space. Blake? Yeah, baby, it's me. I heard about your father. I'm so sorry. I know this must be really hard for you. She gripped the phone tighter. How did you hear about my father? It was in the newspaper. The obituary mentioned you as his only surviving child. I've been thinking about you so much lately, wondering how you were doing. And when I saw this, I just had to call. 10 years. 10 years of silence, and he calls the day she inherits $5 million. The coincidence was so obvious it would have been funny if it wasn't so insulting. What do you want, Blake? I want to be there for you. I know I messed up before. I was young and stupid and scared. But I've grown up, Zara. I've learned from my mistakes. And I still love you. She almost laughed. Almost. But the hurt was too deep, too old. You left me. I know. And I've regretted it every single day since. Please, can we meet? Can we talk? I'm actually in town right now. I could come over. How did you get my number? Pause. I hired a private investigator. A few months ago. I've been trying to work up the courage to call you. A few months ago. Before her father died. Before the inheritance became public knowledge. She wanted to believe that meant something, but she had learned not to trust coincidences. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Zara. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. I spent 10 years thinking about what I lost. About what we could have had. Don't you want to know why I left? Don't you want closure? She did want to know. That question had haunted her for a decade. But she also knew that some doors should stay closed. I have to go, Blake. Wait. Can I at least come to the funeral? To pay my respects? Your father was going to be my father-in-law. I owed him that much. There is no funeral. He was cremated. Another pause. Oh, well, maybe we could have a memorial dinner? Just the two of us? To remember him. Everything in her body was screaming no. But that voice, those memories, the part of her that had loved him so completely, it was all still there, buried under 10 years of hurt but not dead. I need time to think. Of course. I understand. I'll call you tomorrow? Blake. I love you, Zara. I never stopped loving you. Whatever happens, I need you to know that. He hung up before she could respond. She stared at the phone in her hand, her heart racing. Blake was back. On the same day she inherited millions. On the same day her father's letter warned her that he had been right about Blake all along. This wasn't a coincidence. This was exactly what her father had been afraid of. But even knowing that, even understanding the timing, part of her wanted to see him. Part of her needed to know why. Part of her needed to look him in the eye and ask him where he had been when she was eating ramen noodles for dinner because it was all she could afford. Where he had been when her car broke down and she walked to work in the rain. Where he had been when she cried herself to sleep, wondering what she had done wrong. She looked at the inheritance letter again. $5 million. A mansion. A new life. And the return of the man who had destroyed her old one. This was going to get complicated. Zara spent the next morning at the lawyer's office, signing papers and trying to process the reality of her new financial situation. Mr. Blackstone was a kind older man who seemed genuinely happy for her, but also concerned. Your father updated his will 6 months ago, he said, sliding another document across his desk. He added some specific provisions about protecting the inheritance from outside influences. What kind of provisions? Well, for instance, the money is held in a trust that can't be accessed by a spouse unless you've been married for at least 5 years. And if you do remarry, there's a prenuptial agreement requirement that protects the principal. Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks. He really did know about Blake leaving. He mentioned that he was concerned about men who might try to take advantage of your new wealth. He wanted to make sure you were protected. She signed the papers, her hand shaking slightly. Even from the grave, her father was trying to control her life. But this time, maybe his control was meant to protect her instead of limit her. By the time she got home that afternoon, she was exhausted. The reality of owning a mansion, several rental properties, and more money than she had ever dreamed of was overwhelming. She had always lived simply out of necessity, not choice. Now she had to learn how to be wealthy. Her phone was ringing when she walked through the door. Hey, beautiful. Blake's voice was softer today, more careful. She could hear traffic in the background. Where are you? She asked. Actually, I'm outside your building. I brought coffee. And flowers. I know you always liked those yellow ones. Sunflowers? I remember you had them in our apartment. She walked to her window and looked down. There he was, leaning against a black BMW, holding a bouquet and 2 coffee cups. He looked good. Really good. His hair was perfectly cut, his clothes expensive. 10 years had been kind to him. That made her angry. She had struggled while he had apparently thrived. I told you I needed time to think. I know. But I was hoping maybe we could think together. Just for an hour. Please? She looked at herself in the hallway mirror. Jeans with a small hole in the knee, a t-shirt from a school fundraiser, no makeup. She looked like what she was, an elementary school teacher who had just lost her father. She didn't look like someone who had just inherited $5 million. Give me 10 minutes. She hung up and changed into a nicer dress, one she usually saved for parent conferences. Put on some lipstick. Brushed her hair. She told herself it was about dignity, not about impressing Blake. But she knew she was lying. When she opened the door, the first thing she noticed was his smile. It was the same smile that had made her fall in love at 22. Wide and genuine and just a little crooked. Hi, he said simply. Hi. He handed her the flowers and one of the coffee cups. Vanilla latte with extra vanilla. Still your favorite? She was surprised he remembered. Yeah. They stood in her doorway for a moment, neither sure what to do next. He was looking at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and she hated how good that felt. You want to sit? She asked, gesturing to her small couch. Actually, I was hoping we could go for a drive. I know a place. Every instinct told her to say no. But curiosity won. She grabbed her purse. The BMW was definitely new and definitely expensive. The interior smelled like leather and success. Blake opened her door for her, something he had never done when they were married. Nice car, she said as he got in. Thanks. Business has been good. What business? Real estate development. I have a company now. 15 employees. Of course he did. Of course he had built a successful life while she was grading spelling tests and clipping coupons. He drove them to the lake where they used to go on weekends when they were young and broke and happy. It looked the same except the old picnic table had been replaced with a newer one. They sat on the table, feet on the bench just like old times. The silence stretched between them. I owe you an explanation, Blake said finally. Yes, you do. I was scared. We were so young and your father hated me and I felt like I was holding you back. You were this smart, beautiful woman who could have had anything, and I was just a guy with big dreams and no plan. So you left. I left. He turned to look at her. It was the biggest mistake of my life. Where did you go? California first. Then Texas. I worked construction, saved money, started flipping houses. Built my company from nothing. He paused. I thought about calling you 1,000 times. But you didn't. I was ashamed. I had left you with nothing and I wanted to come back with something. I wanted to prove I was worth loving. She wanted to scream at him. Wanted to ask him if he thought she would have cared about money if he had just talked to her. If he had included her in his fears instead of just disappearing. I didn't need you to be successful, Blake. I needed you to be there. I know that now. But I was 23 and stupid and proud. I thought if I could make something of myself, I could come back and sweep you off your feet. Show your father he was wrong about me. My father is dead. I know. And I'm sorry. I know you two had your problems, but I also know you loved him. Did she love him? She wasn't sure. She had been angry at him for so long, it was hard to separate love from habit from obligation. How did you find out he died? Blake hesitated. I told you. The newspaper. You said you hired a private investigator months ago. You've been watching me. Not watching. Just checking in. Making sure you were okay. And when you found out I inherited money, you decided it was time to come back. That's not, he stopped. I know how it looks. But it's not about the money, Zara. I didn't even know about the inheritance until I saw the obituary. I was already planning to come back. I swear. She wanted to believe him. Part of her needed to believe him. But her father's words echoed in her head. I was right about Blake. What do you want from me? She asked. I want us to try again. I want to marry you properly this time. I want to give you the life you should have had. We're still married. He looked surprised. What? You never filed for divorce. Neither did I. Legally, we're still husband and wife. Something flickered across his face. Relief? Calculation? It was gone too fast to tell. Even better, he said. We can just pick up where we left off. After 10 years? Blake, I'm not the same person I was. You're not the same person. We don't know each other anymore. So let's get to know each other again. I have time. I have patience. I have money? He flinched. I have love. I've always had love for you. Everything else I built was just filler. I was just trying to fill the hole you left in my life. Despite everything, despite the timing and the suspicion and her father's warnings, her heart cracked a little. She remembered loving this man so completely it had scared her. She remembered planning a life with him, talking about babies and houses and growing old together. I need time, she said. I'll wait. I mean real time, Blake. Not a day or a week. I mean months, maybe years. I need to figure out who I am now with this inheritance, with this new life. I need to grieve my father and process everything that's happened. I understand. Do you? Because I can't have you calling every day and showing up with flowers and pushing me to make decisions. If you want a chance with me, you have to let me breathe. Okay. He reached for her hand. Can I ask one favor? She should say no. But his hand was warm and familiar, and for a moment she was 22 again and in love. What? Can I take you to dinner tomorrow night? Just dinner. As friends. I want to hear about your life, your teaching, everything I missed. No pressure, no agenda. Just two old friends catching up. It was a bad idea. She knew it was a bad idea. But she heard herself saying yes anyway. He smiled, and she remembered why she had fallen for him in the first place. They drove back to her apartment in comfortable silence. When he walked her to her door, he didn't try to kiss her. He just squeezed her hand and said, "Thank you for giving me a chance." After he left, she sat on her couch and stared at the sunflowers. They were beautiful, fresh, expensive. Her phone buzzed with a text. Thank you for today. You're even more beautiful than I remembered. I love you. She set the phone down without responding. Tomorrow she would see him again. Tomorrow she would try to figure out if the man who had broken her heart 10 years ago deserved a second chance. But tonight, she would enjoy the flowers and try not to think about why he had really come back. The restaurant Blake chose was upscale, the kind of place Zara had never been able to afford on her teacher's salary. She felt underdressed despite wearing her best dress, a simple black one she had bought on clearance 3 years ago. Blake looked perfect. Expensive suit, styled hair, confident smile. He stood up when she approached the table, pulled out her chair, ordered wine without looking at the prices. You look stunning, he said. Thank you. She felt awkward, like she was playing a role she didn't know. Dinner started pleasantly enough. He asked about her students, her school, her life. She told him about teaching 3rd grade, about the kids who struggled with reading, about the small victories that made her job worthwhile. You always wanted to make a difference, he said. I'm glad you found a way to do that. What about you? Tell me about your company. His face lit up. Thompson Development. We specialize in luxury residential projects. Just finished a subdivision outside Dallas that sold out in 6 months. Thompson Development? He looked embarrassed. I kept your name. Our name. I guess I never wanted to let go completely. She didn't know how to feel about that. It was either romantic or manipulative, and she couldn't tell which. They were halfway through their entrees when she noticed the woman walking toward their table. Older, elegantly dressed, with Blake's same dark eyes and determined expression. Blake, honey, I'm so sorry I'm late. The woman leaned down to kiss his cheek, then looked at Zara with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And you must be Zara. Zara's stomach dropped. Blake, you didn't mention anyone else was joining us. I didn't know she was coming. Blake's voice was tight. Mom, we talked about this. I know, sweetie, but I was in the neighborhood and I thought it would be nice to meet Zara properly. The woman extended her hand. I'm Patricia Morrison, Blake's mother. Zara remembered Patricia from 10 years ago. She had never liked her, and the feeling had been mutual. Patricia had always thought Zara wasn't good enough for her son. Nice to see you again, Mrs. Morrison. Oh, please call me Patricia. We're family after all. She sat down without being invited. Blake, be a dear and order me a wine. The evening changed completely. Patricia dominated the conversation, asking pointed questions about Zara's life, her plans, her father's estate. Each question felt like a probe, like she was gathering information. I was so sorry to hear about your father, Patricia said. Blake told me he left you quite comfortable. Zara glanced at Blake, who looked uncomfortable. It's been an adjustment. I'm sure. Such a large inheritance must be overwhelming for someone who's never dealt with that kind of money. The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. Zara set down her fork. I'm managing fine. Of course you are, dear. But it's such a responsibility. All those properties to maintain, investments to monitor. It really requires expertise. Patricia, Blake said quietly. That's enough. I'm just saying it might be helpful to have someone with experience help manage everything. Blake has built a very successful business. He understands these things. The agenda became crystal clear. This wasn't a coincidental meeting. This was a planned intervention. You want Blake to help manage my inheritance. I want Blake to help his wife. You two are still married after all. What's yours is his and what's his is yours. That's how marriage works. Zara felt the walls closing in. Actually, that's not how this particular inheritance works. Patricia raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The money is in a trust, with very specific provisions about spousal access. Blake leaned forward. What kind of provisions? The kind that protect me from exactly this conversation. Patricia's smile disappeared. Now, Zara, I hope you don't think we're here for the money. Blake has his own success. We're concerned about you. A young woman alone with that much wealth? It makes you a target. A target for what? For men who want to take advantage of you. For financial advisors who will steal from you. For family members who might contest the will. Patricia leaned forward. Your father had other relatives, didn't he? Cousins? They might have legitimate claims. Zara's blood ran cold. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Blake and we want to protect you. But if you're not careful, if you don't have the right legal representation, you could lose everything. Blake was staring at his plate, saying nothing. That told Zara everything she needed to know. I think I should go, Zara said, reaching for her purse. Wait. Blake finally spoke. Mom, can you give us a minute? Patricia looked annoyed but stood up. I'll wait in the car. But think about what I said, Zara. This world is dangerous for someone like you. When she was gone, Blake reached across the table for Zara's hand. I'm sorry. I didn't know she was going to ambush you like that. Didn't you? No. I swear. I told her I was having dinner with you and she insisted on coming. I should have said no. Blake, what does your mother think is going to happen here? He was quiet for a long moment. She thinks we're going to get back together. And she thinks you might need help managing the inheritance. And what do you think? I think I love you. I think I want to take care of you. And I think my mother has a point about the money making you vulnerable. To who? To people who want to use you. The irony was so thick she almost choked on it. People like you? That's not fair. Isn't it? You show up the day I inherit money. You bring your mother to dinner to pressure me about financial management. You keep mentioning that we're still married. What am I supposed to think? I came back because I love you. You came back because you found out I was rich. He was quiet again. Then, maybe both can be true. At least he was being honest. She stood up. I need to go home. Zara, please. Don't let my mother ruin this. We can work together to what? To manage my money? To make decisions about my life? Blake, I've been managing fine without you for 10 years. But you don't have to anymore. We could be partners. Real partners. I could help you invest, grow the money, build something amazing together. She looked at him, really looked at him. He was handsome and successful and probably sincere about loving her. But he was also sitting here talking about her money like it was already his. I'll pay for dinner, she said. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because this isn't a date. This is a business meeting. And now I know what business you're really in. She left him sitting at the table and walked out to her car. Her hands were shaking as she started the engine. Patricia was waiting by a white Cadillac talking on her phone. When she saw Zara, she ended the call and walked over. Zara, wait. I have nothing to say to you. You're making a mistake. Blake loves you. He's successful now, stable. You two could have a good life together. With him managing my inheritance? With him protecting it? There are people out there who will try to take advantage of you. At least with Blake, you know his intentions. Do I? Patricia stepped closer. Your father cut you off 10 years ago. You lived in poverty while he built his fortune. Don't you think he owed you that money? Don't you think it's a little convenient that he suddenly remembered he had a daughter when he was dying? The comment hit like a slap. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe your father had reasons for leaving you everything. Maybe he knew something about other relatives who might have claims. Maybe the will isn't as solid as you think. Are you saying someone might contest it? Patricia shrugged. I'm saying these things happen. Rich people die, families fight over money. You need protection. You need people on your side who care about you. People like you and Blake. People like your husband. The man who loves you and wants to build a life with you. Zara got in her car and drove away, but Patricia's words followed her home. Could someone contest the will? Did she have relatives she didn't know about? Was her father's money really secure? By the time she got to her apartment, she was paranoid and exhausted. She poured a glass of wine and tried to think clearly. Blake had come back for the money. Maybe he loved her too, but the money was definitely part of it. His mother was already planning how to get access to it. But what if they were right about other threats? What if there were people out there who wanted to take her inheritance? What if she really did need protection? Her phone buzzed. Text from Blake. I'm sorry about tonight. My mother was wrong to pressure you. Can we try again? Just us this time? She set the phone aside without answering. She needed to think. She needed to be smart about this. Tomorrow she would call Mr. Blackstone. She would ask about the security of the will, about potential challenges, about what kind of protection she really needed. But she wouldn't call Blake. Because whatever protection she needed, it wouldn't come from the man who had abandoned her once and was now circling back for her money. The next morning, Zara called in sick to work again and drove straight to Mr. Blackstone's office. She needed answers, and she needed them before Blake and his mother made their next move. Is my inheritance secure? She asked without preamble. Mr. Blackstone looked up from his papers, concern creasing his weathered face. Has something happened? She told him about dinner, about Patricia's veiled threats, about the suggestion that other relatives might contest the will. Your father was very thorough, Mr. Blackstone said finally. He specifically designed the will to prevent exactly this kind of challenge. You are his only child, and he was very clear about his intentions. But could someone still try? Anyone can try to contest a will. The question is whether they would succeed. In this case, very unlikely. He pulled out a thick file. Your father spent months documenting his decision. He had psychiatric evaluations to prove he was of sound mind. He had the will witnessed by multiple parties. And he included specific clauses disinheriting anyone who wasn't you. What about Blake? We're still married. The trust provisions protect against that. He can't access the principal, and he can't make decisions about investments or property sales without your explicit written consent. Zara felt some of her tension ease. So I'm safe. From a legal standpoint, yes. But he hesitated. There are other ways people can pressure you. Emotional manipulation. Social pressure. Sometimes family members band together to make someone feel guilty or uncertain. What do you mean? I've seen cases where relatives convince an heir that they're being selfish, that they should share the wealth, that the deceased would have wanted the money distributed differently. They don't contest the will legally, they just wear down the heir until they voluntarily give up portions of the inheritance. The conversation was interrupted by his secretary's voice over the intercom. Mr. Blackstone? There's a Blake Morrison here to see you. He says it's about the Caldwell estate. Zara and Mr. Blackstone looked at each other. Send him in, the lawyer said. Blake walked in looking different than he had the night before. More formal, more serious. He nodded at Zara but addressed Mr. Blackstone directly. I'm Blake Morrison, Zara's husband. I'd like to discuss my rights regarding my wife's inheritance. Your rights. Mr. Blackstone's voice was carefully neutral. Community property rights. Spousal access to marital assets. That sort of thing. Mr. Morrison, I assume you're aware that this inheritance is held in a trust with very specific provisions? I'm aware. But I'm also aware that trusts can be modified. Especially when both spouses agree. Zara found her voice. I don't agree. Blake turned to her, his expression hurt. Zara, I'm not trying to take your money. I'm trying to protect it. Our future. By demanding access to my inheritance? By making sure we're partners in this. Real partners. He sat down across from her. I've been doing research. Your father's business interests are complex. There are properties that need active management, investments that need oversight. You can't do it alone. I can hire professionals. You can hire me. I know real estate. I know investments. And I love you. Mr. Blackstone cleared his throat. Mr. Morrison, even if Mrs. Thompson wanted to modify the trust, the provisions your father-in-law put in place specifically prevent spousal access for the first 5 years. 5 years. Blake's composure cracked slightly. That's a long time. Your father-in-law was very specific about his concerns regarding opportunistic relationships. The insult landed hard. Blake's face reddened. I'm not opportunistic. I'm her husband. A husband who abandoned her for 10 years and returned coincidentally when she inherited money, Zara said quietly. I explained that. I was building a life for us. You were building a life for you. Blake stood up abruptly. Fine. You want to do this the hard way? We'll do this the hard way. What's that supposed to mean? Zara asked. It means I'm going to explore all my legal options. Spousal rights, community property claims, everything. He looked at Mr. Blackstone. I assume you represent Zara's interests exclusively? That's correct. Then I'll be getting my own attorney. Blake turned to Zara. I didn't want it to come to this. I wanted us to work together. But if you're going to shut me out completely? Blake, you shut me out. For 10 years. And I'm trying to make up for that. But you won't let me. He left without another word. Zara sat in stunned silence. Well, Mr. Blackstone said finally. That was illuminating. Can he really challenge the trust? He can try, but he won't succeed. However, legal challenges can be expensive and time-consuming, even when they're frivolous. Mr. Blackstone made a note in his file. I suggest we prepare for the possibility that he might file suit. What kind of suit? Community property claims, spousal support, maybe even a challenge to your mental capacity to manage the inheritance. He looked at her seriously. Your father anticipated this. He left detailed instructions about how to handle exactly this situation. What instructions? Mr. Blackstone pulled out another document. If anyone attempts to manipulate or coerce you regarding the inheritance, particularly through marriage claims, you have the option to activate additional protection measures. Such as a restraining order template is already prepared. We can file it within hours if needed. There's also a private investigation fund set aside to gather evidence of any fraudulent claims or criminal behavior. Zara felt a chill. Criminal behavior? Your father was very thorough in his research about Mr. Morrison. He hired investigators years ago when he learned about the marriage. What did they find? Mr. Blackstone hesitated. Perhaps we should save that conversation for when we need it. Right now, I suggest you go home, avoid contact with Mr. Morrison and his mother, and let me handle any legal challenges that arise. But when Zara got home, Patricia Morrison was waiting in the lobby of her building. We need to talk, Patricia said. I don't think we do. Yes, we do. Because Blake is about to make this very ugly for you, and I might be the only person who can stop him. Against her better judgment, Zara let Patricia follow her upstairs. Blake is angry, Patricia said once they were in Zara's apartment. He feels humiliated. When Blake feels humiliated, he does stupid things. Like what? Like hiring the most aggressive attorney he can find. Like filing suits that will tie up your inheritance in court for years. Like making your life miserable until you give him what he wants. Why are you telling me this? Patricia sat down on Zara's couch like she owned it. Because I don't want to see either of you destroy your lives over money. Then tell Blake to back off. I tried. He won't listen to me anymore. He's convinced you're being influenced by your father's lawyer to keep him out. Patricia looked around the small apartment. This place is quaint. It's home. It doesn't have to be. You could live anywhere now. Do anything. Be anyone. She leaned forward. But not if Blake ties up your money in court. Legal battles can last years, Zara. Years of frozen assets, legal fees, depositions, media attention. Media attention? Oh yes. Rich widow fights estranged husband over inheritance? The newspapers will love it. Your privacy, your quiet teaching job, your normal life? All gone. Zara felt sick. She hadn't considered the possibility of becoming a tabloid story. What do you want from me? I want you to be reasonable. Blake doesn't need all your money. He just needs enough to feel like an equal partner. Give him a few million, make him feel respected, and this all goes away. A few million? It's not like you need all of it. What's one person going to do with $5 million anyway? The casual way she said it, like a few million was pocket change, made Zara angry. This woman had no idea what it was like to count every penny, to choose between gas and groceries, to work extra jobs just to survive. I'm not giving Blake any of my inheritance. Patricia's demeanor changed. The fake friendliness disappeared. Then you're going to regret it. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Blake has discovered some very interesting things about your father's business dealings. Things that might interest the IRS. Things that might make people question whether you deserve this inheritance at all. What things? Let's just say your father wasn't always careful about how he made his money. Tax avoidance, questionable partnerships, offshore accounts. Patricia stood up. It would be a shame if that information became public during a messy court battle. Zara's heart was racing. You're lying. Am I? Are you willing to bet $5 million on that? After Patricia left, Zara called Mr. Blackstone immediately. She's bluffing, he said after hearing about the threat. Your father's finances were thoroughly audited as part of the estate process. Everything was legal and properly documented. But what if she's not bluffing? What if there's something we don't know? Then we'll deal with it when it arises. But Zara, you cannot let them intimidate you into giving up what's rightfully yours. Maybe I should just give Blake some money? End this before it gets worse. If you give him money now, it won't end anything. It will just prove to him that threatening you works. He'll be back for more. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Patricia's threats, about legal battles, about her quiet life being destroyed by media attention. Maybe it would be easier to just give Blake what he wanted. But then she remembered something her father had written in his letter. Use it to build the life you deserve. Not the life that was easiest. Not the life that avoided conflict. The life she deserved. She had spent 10 years letting other people make decisions about her worth. Her father had cut her off. Blake had left her. She had accepted both punishments like she deserved them. But she didn't deserve them. She deserved the inheritance. She deserved protection from people who wanted to use her. She deserved better than giving in to threats and manipulation. The next morning she called Mr. Blackstone. File the restraining order, she said. And activate those investigation funds. I want to know everything about Blake and Patricia Morrison. Everything. Are you sure? I'm sure. If they want a fight, they'll get one. But they're not getting my money. For the first time in 10 years, Zara felt like she was fighting for herself instead of just surviving. Felt good. Felt right. It felt like something her father would be proud of. The restraining order was served to Blake at his hotel that afternoon. By evening, Zara's phone was buzzing with calls from unknown numbers, Blake trying to reach her from different phones. She didn't answer any of them. The private investigator her father had arranged was named Janet Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who had spent 20 years as a federal agent before starting her own firm. "Your father hired me 3 years ago," Janet explained during their meeting. "He wanted to keep tabs on Blake Morrison just in case he ever resurfaced in your life." "What did you find?" Janet opened a thick file. "Blake Morrison has been busy. He's married and divorced twice since leaving you. Both times he married women with money. Both times he left them financially damaged." Zara's stomach dropped. "He's done this before?" Wife number 2 was Rebecca Chin, inherited a restaurant chain from her grandfather. Blake convinced her to make him a partner in the business. 6 months later, he divorced her and took half of everything, including the restaurants. And wife number 3? Amanda Sterling. She had a trust fund. Blake somehow got himself named as a beneficiary, then left her for another woman. Amanda spent 2 years in court trying to get her money back. Zara felt sick. "So I'm just the latest mark. The biggest mark. 5 million is more than he got from the other 2 combined." Janet pulled out photographs. "But here's where it gets interesting. Blake and his mother have done this as a team. Patricia researches the targets, Blake does the romance, and they split the profits." Profits? They're not just taking money from ex-wives. They're running a business. Patricia finds wealthy women who are vulnerable, recently divorced, recently widowed, isolated. Blake swoops in, courts them, marries them quickly, and they drain the accounts. Janet showed her a photograph of Blake with a woman Zara didn't recognize. This was taken 6 months ago. Her name is Carol Williams. She's a widow whose husband left her a construction company. Blake was consulting on her business expansion. She figured out what he was doing and cut him off. That's when he turned his attention back to you. Zara studied the photograph. Blake looked exactly the same as he had with her, charming, attentive, loving. It was all an act. How many women? That we know of? 7 in the past 10 years. Probably more. Why haven't they gone to the police? Some have. But Blake and Patricia are smart. They always stay just inside the legal boundaries. They don't steal, they convince women to give them money willingly. They don't forge documents, they get women to sign them voluntarily. Then how do we stop them? Janet smiled. Your father thought of that too. He wanted to make sure you had options if Blake ever came back. She pulled out another file. Blake has been using your name and social security number for the past 10 years. Credit cards, loans, business licenses. All opened in your name without your knowledge or consent. That's identity theft. That's a felony. We have bank records, credit applications, even a mortgage he took out in your name in Texas. Zara stared at the papers. Blake had been stealing from her for years. Using her identity to build his business, to fund his lifestyle, to run his cons on other women. Can we prosecute? We can do better than that. We can destroy him. Janet pulled out one final document. Patricia Morrison has a criminal record. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. She served 18 months in federal prison 15 years ago. For what? Running a scam targeting elderly widows. She would befriend them, gain their trust, then convince them to invest in fake businesses. Blake knows about this? Blake was her accomplice. He was a juvenile at the time, so his record was sealed. But we have the court documents. Zara felt a strange mix of vindication and horror. Her instincts about Blake and Patricia had been right, but knowing that she had been married to a career criminal made her feel stupid and used. What do we do now? We file charges for identity theft and fraud. We contact the other victims and encourage them to come forward. And we make sure Blake and Patricia never hurt anyone else. Will that be enough to keep them away from me? Oh, they'll be too busy dealing with federal prosecutors to bother you. Identity theft across state lines is a federal crime. Blake is looking at serious prison time. That evening, Zara sat in her apartment holding the evidence files. 10 years of her life had been built on a lie. Blake had never loved her. He had marked her as a potential victim from the beginning, probably encouraged by his mother. Her phone rang. A known number. Hello? Zara, please don't hang up. Blake's voice was desperate. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. You got a restraining order? Really? After everything we meant to each other? Everything we meant to each other was a lie. That's not true. I loved you. I still love you. You used my identity to commit fraud. For 10 years. Silence. Then, who told you that? Does it matter? It's true. I can explain. Like you explained abandoning me? Like you explained coming back right when I inherited money? Like you explained bringing your mother to threaten me? Zara, listen to me. You don't understand what you're dealing with. There are people who want to hurt you, who want to take your money. My mother and I were trying to protect you. From who? From people like your father's lawyer. From people who want to control you. From people who will use you and throw you away. The irony was so thick she almost laughed. People like you? I never used you. Blake, you opened credit cards in my name. You took out loans in my name. You've been stealing my identity for 10 years. That was just, I needed credit to build my business. I was going to pay it all back when we got back together. We're not getting back together. Yes, we are. You just don't see it yet. But you will. When you realize that everyone else in your life just wants your money, you'll see that I'm the only one who really loves you. You're delusional. Am I? How long do you think it will take before people start coming out of the woodwork? Distant relatives, old friends, charity cases? How long before you can't trust anyone's motives? His words hit closer to home than she wanted to admit. She had already started questioning every interaction, wondering if people were treating her differently because of the money. At least I know your motives, she said. My motives are to love you and protect you and build a life with you. Everything else is just details. Details like fraud and identity theft? Mistakes. Mistakes I made when I was young and desperate. But I can fix them. We can fix them together. Blake, I'm hanging up now. Don't call me again. Zara, wait. You don't want to do this. You don't want to destroy our chance at happiness over some paperwork mistakes. Our chance at happiness was destroyed 10 years ago when you left me. I came back. You came back for the money. She hung up and immediately called Janet Rodriguez. He's escalating, Janet said after hearing about the call. That's good. Desperate people make mistakes. He's trying to make me feel guilty. Like I'm the one ruining things. Classic manipulation. He's going to get worse before he gets better. Are you prepared for that? What do you mean? He might try to turn public opinion against you. Rich woman ruins poor man's life, that kind of thing. He might contact your work, your friends, try to make you look bad. Zara hadn't thought of that. Can he do that? He can try. But we'll be ready for him. The next morning, Zara woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, all from different numbers. All from Blake. Please don't do this, I love you, we can work this out, you're making a mistake, I never meant to hurt you, just give me 5 minutes to explain. The messages got increasingly desperate and angry as the night went on. You're being manipulated, your father's lawyer is using you, you'll regret this, I know things about your father you don't know, don't make me tell the truth about what kind of man he really was. The last message, sent at 3 a.m., was the most disturbing. You think you're safe now, but you're not. You have no idea what you've started. Zara forwarded all the messages to Janet and Mr. Blackstone. Then she turned off her phone and got ready for work. It was time to go back to her normal life. To remember who she was before the inheritance, before Blake, before all of this chaos. She was a teacher. She helped children learn and grow. She made a difference in small, quiet ways. No amount of money and no amount of drama was going to change that. But as she drove to school, she couldn't shake Blake's words. You have no idea what you've started. What had she started? And what was Blake planning to do about it? Zara made it through exactly half a day of teaching before her principal called her to the office. Mrs. Patterson looked uncomfortable, which immediately put Zara on edge. I got some strange phone calls this morning, Mrs. Patterson said. People asking about your situation. Your personal life. Zara's heart sank. What kind of people? Someone claiming to be from a newspaper. Someone who said they were doing a background check for legal purposes. And someone who said they were concerned about your mental health. My mental health? They said you had recently inherited a large sum of money and might not be stable enough to continue working with children. Mrs. Patterson looked embarrassed. Of course, I told them that was ridiculous. You're one of our best teachers. Thank you. But Zara, I have to ask, is there something going on I should know about? Something that might affect your work here? Zara explained as briefly as possible about the inheritance, about Blake, about the legal situation. Mrs. Patterson listened with growing concern. I think you should take some time off, she said finally. Not because I doubt your ability to teach, but because you need space to deal with this situation without worrying about protecting the school from bad publicity. Bad publicity? Rich teacher fights ex-husband over millions? Zara, that's exactly the kind of story local news loves. I can't have reporters calling here, bothering our staff, disrupting our students. Zara felt like the ground was falling out from under her. Teaching was her anchor, her identity, her safe space. Now even that was being threatened. How long? Take the rest of the semester. Use your personal days and I'll arrange for extended leave without pay if needed. When this all settles down, your job will be here waiting. Zara drove home in a daze. Blake was systematically trying to isolate her, to destroy her normal life piece by piece. If she couldn't work, if she couldn't trust anyone's motives, if she couldn't have privacy, what kind of life would she have left? Her phone was buzzing with messages from numbers she didn't recognize. When she finally checked them, her blood ran cold. Saw the news about your inheritance. Remember me? Uncle Frank. Zara, it's your cousin Michelle. Dad says we should talk. This is Thomas Caldwell. I think there's been a mistake about our grandfather's will. Relatives. People claiming to be relatives. All suddenly interested in connecting with her. Janet called while she was reading the messages. Blake's working fast, Janet said. He's contacted every local news station with a story about a poor man being shut out of his rightful inheritance by his rich wife's fancy lawyers. Is that legal? Unfortunately, yes. He's not saying anything technically false, just presenting the facts in a way that makes you look bad. What about the identity theft charges? Filed this morning. But Blake's lawyer is claiming it was all a misunderstanding between spouses. He's saying you knew about the credit accounts and approved them. That's a lie. I know. But it's going to take time to prove. Meanwhile, Blake is using the media attention to pressure you. Zara felt exhausted. How many people are going to come out of the woodwork claiming to be relatives? Your father anticipated that too. He had genealogists research your family tree extensively. There are no living relatives with any legitimate claim to his estate. Then who are these people texting me? Scammers mostly. People who read about the inheritance and are hoping you're naive enough to send them money. Some might be people Blake and Patricia are paying to harass you. This is insane. This is what happens when poor people suddenly become rich. Every vulture in a 100-mile radius smells blood. That evening, a news van pulled up outside Zara's building. She watched from her window as a reporter and cameraman set up on the sidewalk. Her phone rang. Blake. Enjoying the attention? He asked. You did this. I told the truth. I told them about a woman who inherited millions and is using expensive lawyers to keep her own husband from having any access to marital assets. We're not really married, Blake. Not in any way that matters. We're legally married. That matters to me. Only because you never filed for divorce. Only because you wanted to keep using my identity. I kept your name because I loved you. I kept our marriage because I hoped we'd find our way back to each other. You kept our marriage because it gave you legal cover for identity theft. Believe what you want. But ask yourself this, who benefits from us fighting? Not me. Not you. The only people who benefit are the lawyers billing you thousands of dollars to keep us apart. Zara looked out at the news van. You called the reporters. I called one reporter. I told them about a woman who was so poisoned against her husband by greedy lawyers that she filed false criminal charges rather than share her inheritance. False charges? I had permission to use your credit. We're married. Spouses can open joint accounts. Not without the other spouse's knowledge. You'll have to prove you didn't know. Good luck with that. The casual confidence in his voice chilled her. You're going to lie. I'm going to tell my side of the story. I'm going to tell them about the woman I loved who became cruel and vindictive the moment she got money. I'm going to tell them about lawyers who convinced you to destroy your own marriage for the sake of greed. Blake. I'm going to tell them about your father too. About the kind of man he really was. About the business deals that weren't quite legal. About the people he hurt building his fortune. Zara's grip tightened on the phone. You don't know anything about my father. Don't I? Your father hired investigators to dig into my past. Did you think I wouldn't return the favor? What are you talking about? I know about the tax shelters. I know about the bribes to city officials. I know about the partners he cheated and the employees he illegally fired. Your inheritance isn't clean money, Zara. It's blood money. You're lying. Am I? Ask your lawyer. Ask him to show you the full investigation reports. Ask him why your father was so paranoid about protecting his assets. It wasn't because he was generous. It was because he was guilty. Blake hung up, leaving Zara staring at her phone. Was he telling the truth about her father? Mr. Blackstone had said her father's finances were thoroughly audited, but audits only found what accountants looked for. If her father had been involved in illegal activities, would an estate audit necessarily reveal them? She called Mr. Blackstone. Blake is claiming my father was involved in illegal business practices. Is that possible? Your father was a successful businessman. Success sometimes requires aggressive strategies. That's not an answer. Mr. Blackstone was quiet for a moment. Your father operated in a complex legal environment. Real estate development, city planning, zoning issues, there are a lot of gray areas. Gray areas or illegal areas? Your father never broke any laws that I'm aware of. But he was very concerned about his reputation, very protective of his privacy. That's why he wanted to make sure your inheritance was protected from people who might try to use his past against you. People like Blake. People like Blake. But Zara could hear something in Mr. Blackstone's voice. Hesitation. Uncertainty. Maybe even guilt. What if Blake was right? What if her father's money really was dirty? What if she was fighting to protect an inheritance that had been built on corruption and crime? She looked out at the news van again. Tomorrow she would be on the evening news. The rich teacher who was too greedy to share her inheritance with her loving husband. The daughter who had inherited blood money and was using it to destroy her own marriage. Blake wasn't just trying to get her money. He was trying to destroy her reputation, her relationships, her sense of self. He was trying to make her feel so guilty and isolated that giving him money would seem like the only way to make it stop. But there was another option. She could fight back. She called Janet Rodriguez. I want to go public, Zara said. I want to tell my side of the story. Are you sure? Once you engage with the media, there's no taking it back. Blake is already making me a public figure. At least this way I can control the narrative. What do you want to say? The truth. About Blake abandoning me. About his history with other women. About the identity theft. About Patricia's criminal record. That could be dangerous. They might escalate. They're already escalating. Blake just threatened to destroy my father's reputation. He's trying to make me feel guilty for fighting back. And how do you feel? Zara looked at herself in the hallway mirror. She looked tired, stressed, older than her 32 years. But she also looked determined. I feel angry, she said. And I'm tired of being defensive. It's time to go on the offensive. Then let's destroy them before they destroy you. The interview was set for the next morning. Janet had connected Zara with Amanda Cross, an investigative reporter who specialized in financial fraud cases. Amanda had been following Blake and Patricia's pattern for months, collecting information from their previous victims. You're not the first woman to come forward, Amanda explained during their pre-interview meeting. But you're the one with the resources to fight back properly. What about the other women? Too embarrassed, too financially ruined, or too scared? Blake and Patricia are very good at making their victims feel complicit in their own victimization. Amanda showed her a thick file of evidence. Rebecca Chin lost her restaurants and her family's legacy. Amanda Sterling lost her trust fund and her relationship with her children. Blake convinced them she was mentally unstable. Carol Williams lost her husband's construction company and had to declare bankruptcy. All of them believed Blake loved them? All of them. Blake is very convincing. He studies his targets, learns their vulnerabilities, tells them exactly what they need to hear. Amanda pulled out a recorded phone call. Carol Williams let us record her last conversation with Blake. You should hear this. The recording was heartbreaking. Carol begging Blake to explain why he was leaving, Blake telling her she was too emotional and unstable to manage her own business, promising to help her if she just signed over power of attorney. He does the same thing every time, Amanda said. Romance, isolation, manipulation, then abandonment with maximum financial damage. And Patricia? She's the mastermind. Blake is just the pretty face. Patricia researches the targets, develops the strategy, manages the legal aspects. She's been running variations of this scam for 20 years. The interview was scheduled for that afternoon. By morning, 3 more news vans had joined the first one outside Zara's building. Her phone was ringing constantly with requests for interviews, comments, statements. Janet picked her up in an unmarked car and drove her to the news station through a back entrance. Remember, she said, stick to the facts. Don't get emotional. Let the evidence speak for itself. Amanda Cross was younger than Zara had expected, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. We're going live in 30 minutes, she said. Blake Morrison has been calling all morning, demanding equal time. We're going to give it to him right after your segment. He's going to be on the same show? Different segments. You won't have to see him. but he's going to have a chance to respond to whatever you say. Zara's hands were shaking as they applied her makeup. This was it. No more hiding, no more being defensive. Time to tell the truth. The interview started with Amanda explaining the background, the inheritance, the estranged husband's return, the legal battle. Then she turned to Zara. Tell us about Blake Morrison. Blake was my husband. He left me 10 years ago without explanation, without goodbye, without any contact since. He returned the day after I inherited money from my father. Had you heard from him at all during those 10 years? Nothing. No calls, no letters, no attempt at contact. But I recently learned that he was using my identity during that time to open credit accounts, take out loans, and conduct business. Without your knowledge? Completely without my knowledge. I've filed criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. Amanda pulled out documents. We've obtained records showing that Blake Morrison used your social security number and personal information to secure over $200,000 in credit and loans over the past decade. That's correct. We've also learned that this isn't the first time Mr. Morrison has been involved with a woman who had significant assets. Can you tell us about that? Zara detailed Rebecca Chen's story, Amanda Sterling's story, Carol Williams' story. The pattern of seduction, manipulation, and financial destruction. Mr. Morrison's mother, Patricia Morrison, has also been involved in these relationships. What can you tell us about her? Patricia Morrison is a convicted felon. She served 18 months in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. She and Blake worked together to target vulnerable women with assets. Amanda showed court documents, prison records, financial statements. The evidence was overwhelming. What do you say to people who might think this is just a bitter ex-wife trying to avoid sharing her inheritance? I say look at the evidence. Look at the pattern. Look at the other women Blake has destroyed. This isn't about money. This is about justice. What do you want people to know? Zara looked directly into the camera. I want them to know that financial predators are real. They target people who are grieving, isolated, or vulnerable. They use love as a weapon. And they count on their victims being too ashamed or too scared to fight back. Are you afraid? I was afraid. But now I'm angry. And I'm not going to let them win. The segment ended, and Zara was escorted to a waiting room while Blake was brought in for his interview. She could hear his voice through the thin walls but couldn't make out the words. He's good, Amanda said, coming to find her 20 minutes later. Very smooth, very sympathetic. He's portraying himself as a reformed man who made mistakes but truly loves you. What did he say about the identity theft? He claims you knew about all the accounts, that as your husband he had implied permission to use your credit. He says the criminal charges are just a way to pressure him in the divorce proceedings. Divorce proceedings? He's filing for divorce. And demanding half of your inheritance as community property. Zara felt sick. Can he do that? He can try. But Janet's evidence should make that very difficult. They watched Blake's segment together. He was everything Amanda had said: smooth, charming, seemingly sincere. He talked about being young and making mistakes, about spending 10 years building a successful business so he could come back and provide for Zara properly. I love my wife, he said, looking directly into the camera. I've always loved her. And I'm not going to let lawyers and investigators and money come between us. When asked about the other women, he dismissed them as disgruntled ex-girlfriends spreading lies. When asked about his mother's criminal record, he said people deserved second chances. My mother made mistakes 20 years ago. She paid her debt to society. That has nothing to do with my relationship with Zara. But the pattern of targeting wealthy women? There's no pattern. I've had relationships with different women over the years. Some had money, some didn't. Love doesn't discriminate based on bank accounts. He was good. Really good. If Zara hadn't lived through his abandonment, if she hadn't seen the evidence of his crimes, she might have believed him herself. The show ended with Amanda promising follow-up segments as the story developed. Blake's interview would air that evening. How do you think it went? Zara asked as Janet drove her home. You were great. Calm, factual, credible. Blake was good too, but he made some statements that we can prove are false. That will help us. What statements? He claimed the other women were just ex-girlfriends. But we have marriage certificates showing he was legally married to Rebecca Chen and Amanda Sterling. Bigamy is a felony. Bigamy? He never divorced you, remember? Every marriage after yours was illegal. Zara stared at Janet. He's been committing bigamy for 10 years. Multiple felonies. Identity theft, fraud, bigamy. He's looking at serious federal prison time. And Patricia? Conspiracy, Aiding and abetting, probably racketeering. She's going back to prison. When they got back to Zara's building, the news vans were gone, but there was a crowd of people waiting. Not reporters, just people. Neighbors, strangers, some holding signs. What's happening? Public reaction, Janet said. The story is going viral. People are angry about what Blake and Patricia did to those other women. As they got closer, Zara could read some of the signs. Justice for Zara, stop financial predators, believe survivors. An older woman approached them. Are you Zara? I just wanted to say thank you for speaking out. My daughter went through something similar. She was too scared to press charges. Others came forward with similar stories. Women who had been targeted by financial predators. People who had watched friends or family members be victimized by romance scams. You're giving people hope, one woman said. You're showing them they can fight back. Zara felt overwhelmed. She had expected backlash, criticism, maybe even threats. She hadn't expected support. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've just done. This isn't over. But looking at the crowd of supporters, at the evidence Janet had gathered, at the media attention finally focused on Blake and Patricia's crimes instead of her inheritance, Zara felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Oh, Blake and Patricia had underestimated her. They thought she would be easy to intimidate, easy to manipulate, easy to destroy. They were wrong. Within 24 hours of the interview airing, everything changed. The FBI contacted Janet with information about a multi-state investigation into romance fraud schemes. Blake and Patricia Morrison were already on their radar, connected to at least 12 victims across 6 states. This is bigger than we thought, Janet explained during an emergency meeting at Mr. Blackstone's office. The Morrisons aren't just opportunistic criminals. They're part of an organized network. A network. Romance fraud rings. They share information about targets, coordinate timing, even loan each other fake identities and documentation. Patricia Morrison has been connected to at least 6 different men who work the same scam. Blake isn't her only son? Blake isn't her son at all. His real name is Marcus Blake Thompson. Patricia Morrison recruited him 15 years ago when he was facing drug charges. She offered him a new identity and a profitable career if he'd work for her. Zara felt like the world was spinning. Nothing about him is real? His feelings for you might have been real, Mr. Blackstone said gently. But everything else, his background, his family history, even his name, it's all fabricated. Janet pulled out more files. The good news is that this makes the federal case much stronger. The bad news is that Marcus Blake Thompson has disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? He checked out of his hotel yesterday after the interview aired. We've been monitoring his credit cards, his bank accounts, his phone. Nothing. He's gone. And Patricia? Also gone. They're probably halfway to Mexico by now. Zara slumped in her chair. After all this, after exposing them publicly, after filing charges, they were just going to get away? Actually, Janet said, them running is the best thing that could have happened. How is that good? Because it proves they're guilty. Innocent people don't flee the country when they're accused of crimes. Their running validates everything you said in that interview. Over the next few days, the story exploded across national media. The romance fraud angle resonated with people who had been victims of similar scams. The identity theft angle outraged people who understood how devastating that crime could be. The inheritance angle fascinated people who loved stories about justice prevailing over greed. But most importantly, other victims started coming forward. Rebecca Chin called Zara directly. I saw your interview. I can't believe how brave you were. I was too ashamed to tell anyone what Blake did to me. You have nothing to be ashamed of, Zara said. He's a professional. This is what he does. I lost everything because of him. My restaurants, my family's legacy, my relationship with my children. They thought I was crazy for trusting him with the business. Are you willing to testify against him? If it will help stop him from hurting other women, yes. Amanda Sterling called next, then Carol Williams, then women Zara had never heard of. Each had a similar story. Each had been isolated, manipulated, and financially destroyed by Blake and Patricia. There are probably dozens more who haven't come forward yet, Amanda Cross told her during a follow-up interview. Your courage in speaking out is giving other victims permission to tell their stories. The FBI organized a victim conference call. Zara listened as woman after woman described the same pattern of abuse. The false identities, the fabricated backgrounds, the isolation tactics, the financial manipulation. The Morrison network has stolen an estimated $12 million over the past 15 years, Agent Sarah Chin explained. But because they were so good at making their victims feel complicit, most never reported the crimes. "What happens now?" asked one of the women. "Now we have enough evidence to prosecute. Interstate fraud, identity theft, money laundering, racketeering. When we catch them, they're going to prison for a very long time." When? Not if. Zara found that encouraging. The media attention brought unexpected benefits. A victims' rights organization reached out to offer legal support for all of Blake's victims. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell their story to help educate people about romance fraud. A publisher approached Zara about writing a book. But the most meaningful contact came from her students' parents. "Mrs. Thompson," said the mother of one of her third graders, "I just wanted you to know that we support you. What you're doing is important." "My daughter asks about you every day," said another parent. "She misses her teacher." "When will you be coming back?" asked a father. "The substitute is nice, but she's not you." Zara realized she missed teaching desperately. The inheritance had given her financial freedom, but it had also taken away the work that gave her purpose and identity. She called Mrs. Patterson. "I'd like to come back to work." "Are you sure? The media attention has died down, and my students need consistency." "What about the legal situation?" "The FBI is handling it now. Blake and Patricia are fugitives. There's no immediate danger." "Then come back Monday. Your kids will be thrilled." That weekend, Zara did something she hadn't done since the inheritance. She went shopping without checking prices. Not for luxury items or expensive clothes, but for her classroom. New books, art supplies, educational games. Things that would make her students' learning experience better. It felt good to use the money for something positive instead of just protecting it from people who wanted to steal it. On Sunday, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Zara?" The voice was unfamiliar, older, with a slight accent. "Who is this?" "My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm calling from the FBI field office in San Diego. We've arrested Patricia Morrison." Zara's heart jumped. "You caught her?" "She was trying to cross into Mexico with false documents. She's in federal custody." "What about Blake?" "Still looking for him. But Patricia is already cooperating. She's providing information about the entire network in exchange for a reduced sentence." "What kind of information?" "Names, locations, bank account numbers. She's given us enough to shut down romance fraud operations in 12 states. "And Blake?" "She's told us where he might be hiding. We have teams searching now." After Elena hung up, Zara called Janet with the news. "This is huge," Janet said. "With Patricia cooperating, Blake won't be able to hide for long. And more importantly, she's going to help us recover assets for all the victims." "Recover assets?" "The money Blake and Patricia stole wasn't spent. Most of it was invested, laundered through shell companies, hidden in offshore accounts. With Patricia's cooperation, we can trace it and return it to the people they robbed." "All of it?" "Probably not all, but a significant portion. Rebecca Chin might get her restaurants back. Amanda Sterling might recover her trust fund." For the first time since this whole ordeal began, Zara felt like justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about restoration. Monday morning, she walked back into her classroom to find her students had made a banner. "Welcome back, Mrs. Thompson. We missed you." "Did you catch the bad guys?" asked Jake, one of her more precocious students. "Some of them," Zara said. "And we're still working on the rest." "Are you still rich?" asked Melissa. "Yes." "That's cool. Are you going to buy the school new playground equipment?" Zara laughed. "We'll see." Teaching felt like coming home. Helping children learn, watching them grow, being part of their development, this was what mattered. The money was just a tool. It couldn't give her purpose or identity or happiness. But it could help her do more of what already made her happy. That afternoon, she got a call from Elena Vasquez. "We found him." "Blake?" "Marcus Thompson, yes. He was hiding in a fishing village in Belize. He's being extradited as we speak." "When will he be back?" "Tomorrow. He'll be arraigned Wednesday on federal charges." "Will I have to testify?" "Eventually, yes. But with Patricia's cooperation and all the evidence we've gathered, he'll probably take a plea deal." "How long will he go to prison?" "With his record, with the scope of the crimes, with the multiple victims? Probably 15 to 20 years. 15 to 20 years. Blake would be in his 50s when he got out. His career as a romance fraud would be over." That evening, Zara sat in her small apartment. She still hadn't moved to the mansion and thought about the past few weeks. A month ago, she had been a struggling teacher living paycheck to paycheck. Now she was a millionaire who had helped expose a nationwide fraud ring and brought justice to dozens of victims. Her father had been right about Blake. But he had also been right about something else. The money could help her build the life she deserved. Not a life of luxury and indulgence, but a life of purpose and impact. A life where she could help people, where she could make a difference, where she could use her resources to fight injustice. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, her heart stopped. But it wasn't Blake. "This is Rebecca Chin. I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done. Because you spoke out, I'm going to get my restaurants back. Because you fought, my children understand that I wasn't crazy or weak. Because you refused to be a victim, none of us have to be victims anymore. Thank you." Zara smiled and put down her phone. Tomorrow, Blake would be in federal custody. Patricia was already talking to prosecutors. The network that had destroyed so many lives was being dismantled. Justice was being served. And for the first time in 10 years, Zara felt like the strong, confident woman she had been before Blake broke her heart. The woman her father had always known she could be. The courthouse was packed for Blake's arraignment. Media crews lined the sidewalk, victims and their families filled the gallery, and federal prosecutors carried boxes of evidence that represented years of criminal activity. Zara sat in the front row with Rebecca Chin, Amanda Sterling, and Carol Williams. All four women had chosen to attend, wanting to look Blake in the eye when he finally faced justice. When Blake was led into the courtroom in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, Zara barely recognized him. The confident, charming man who had swept back into her life 6 weeks ago was gone. This person looked smaller, older, defeated. He glanced at the gallery and his eyes found hers. For a moment, she saw a flicker of the man she had once loved. Then he looked away. The charges were read: 15 counts of identity theft, 12 counts of fraud, 8 counts of bigamy, 6 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of racketeering conspiracy. Each count carried a potential sentence of 5 to 20 years. "How does the defendant plead?" asked Judge Morrison. Blake's attorney whispered in his ear. Blake stood slowly. "Not guilty, Your Honor." The plea surprised no one. Federal cases of this magnitude almost always started with not guilty pleas while lawyers negotiated deals. "The government requests that the defendant be held without bail," said Assistant U.S. Attorney David Park. "Mr. Thompson is a flight risk who has already demonstrated his willingness to flee the country when facing criminal charges." Blake's attorney argued for bail, citing his client's cooperation in returning to face charges. But the judge was unmoved. "The defendant will be remanded to federal custody pending trial," Judge Morrison ruled. "Given the serious nature of these charges and the defendant's recent flight to Belize, I find that no conditions of release would reasonably assure his appearance." Blake was led away without looking back. Outside the courthouse, the victim's attorney held a press conference. "Today marks the beginning of justice for the dozens of women who were victimized by Marcus Thompson and Patricia Morrison," she said. "But this case represents more than just individual crimes. It represents a pattern of predatory behavior that targets vulnerable people at their most emotionally fragile moments." Rebecca Chin spoke about losing her family's restaurant chain. Amanda Sterling talked about the impact on her children. Carol Williams described the bankruptcy that followed Blake's abandonment. When it was Zara's turn to speak, she looked directly into the cameras. 10 years ago, I thought I was a failure because the man I loved left me. I thought there was something wrong with me, something that made me unworthy of love. Today I know the truth, there was nothing wrong with me. There was everything wrong with him." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "To the women who are watching this and recognizing their own stories, you are not alone. You are not stupid. You are not to blame. These criminals are professionals who know exactly how to exploit our capacity for love and trust. But they can only succeed if we stay silent." "What's next for you?" asked a reporter. "I'm going back to teaching. I'm going back to my life. And I'm using my father's gift to make sure other victims get the justice they deserve." That evening, Zara met with Mr. Blackstone to discuss establishing a foundation to help victims of financial fraud. "Your father would be proud," he said as they reviewed the legal documents. "He always hoped you would use his wealth to help people. Did he really think Blake would come back?" "He hoped Blake wouldn't. But he prepared for the possibility that he would." Mr. Blackstone pulled out a sealed envelope. "He left this for you to read after the legal situation was resolved." Inside was another letter in her father's careful handwriting. "Zara, if you're reading this, it means Blake Morrison came back and you survived his attempt to steal your inheritance. I'm proud of you for fighting back. I know you hated me for 10 years. I know you thought I was cruel and controlling. But I also knew Blake would leave you, and I knew he would come back if you ever had money. I couldn't protect you from the heartbreak of his leaving, but I could protect you from the destruction of his return. The trust provisions, the investigation fund, the legal protections, all of it was designed to give you the tools to defend yourself when he inevitably tried to manipulate you again. I wasn't a perfect father. I was too harsh, too demanding, too focused on money and success. But I loved you. I always loved you. And I wanted to make sure that when you needed strength, you would have it. Build something beautiful with this gift. Help people who can't help themselves. Be the woman I always knew you could be. Love, Dad. Zara wiped away tears as she finished reading. Her father had known. He had planned for this. Even his final gift had been an act of protection. 3 weeks later, Blake's attorney called with news that he wanted to make a deal. He'll plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a 15-year sentence, the prosecutor explained to Zara and the other victims. He's also agreed to provide full cooperation in recovering assets and prosecuting other members of the fraud network. 15 years? Asked Amanda Sterling. With time served in good behavior, he could be out in 12. But he'll also have to pay full restitution to all victims, and he'll be a convicted felon for the rest of his life. What about Patricia? Asked Rebecca. She's already taken a deal. 10 years, full cooperation, complete asset forfeiture. The victims met privately to discuss whether to accept the plea agreement. I want him to serve as much time as possible, said Carol Williams. I want this to be over, said Amanda Sterling. I want to get my money back and move on with my life. They looked at Zara. As the most recent victim and the one whose case had exposed the entire network, her opinion carried weight. I think we should accept it, she said finally. 15 years is a long time. He'll be middle-aged when he gets out, with a criminal record that will make it impossible for him to run these scams again. And most importantly, we get our lives back now instead of spending years in trial proceedings. The others agreed. The plea deal was accepted. On the day of Blake's sentencing, Zara chose not to attend. She had said everything she needed to say. She had gotten the justice she deserved. Now it was time to focus on the future instead of the past. Instead, she spent the day at the mansion her father had left her, meeting with architects about converting part of it into offices for the Caldwell Foundation for Fraud Victims. The foundation would provide legal assistance, financial counseling, and emotional support for people who had been victimized by romance scams and financial fraud. It's going to help a lot of people, said the architect as they toured the space. That's the point, Zara said. That evening, Janet called with news from the sentencing hearing. 15 years as agreed. He gave a statement saying he was sorry for the pain he caused, but it felt pretty hollow. Did he mention me specifically? He said he hoped someday you could forgive him. What did you tell the reporter who asked for your response? Zara had thought about this moment for weeks. What would she say when Blake was finally sentenced? How would she feel when justice was officially served? I told them, she said, that forgiveness is something you earn, not something you're entitled to. And that 15 years is a good start. 6 months later, Zara stood in front of her new third-grade class in a school across town, a school in a low-income neighborhood where her salary was paid by the Caldwell Foundation and her classroom was equipped with the best materials money could buy. She was still teaching. She was still making a difference in small, quiet ways. But now she was also making a difference in bigger ways, helping fraud victims across the country recover their lives and their faith in humanity. The inheritance had given her choices she never thought she would have. The betrayal had given her strength she never knew she possessed. And the justice had given her peace she had been seeking for 10 years. Blake was in federal prison. Patricia was in federal prison. The fraud network was dismantled. The victims were getting their money back. And Zara Thompson was finally, completely herself. 1 year after Blake's sentencing, Zara walked into the annual Caldwell Foundation Gala holding the hand of Jonathan Rivera, the federal prosecutor who had handled Blake's case. They had started dating 6 months ago, after the legal proceedings were completely finished. Nervous? He asked as they approached the entrance to the ballroom. Excited, she said. This is the first time all the victims will be together since the trial. The foundation had grown beyond Zara's wildest expectations. They had helped recover over $8 million for fraud victims, provided legal assistance to hundreds of people, and established prevention programs in 12 states. Rebecca Chin approached them first, smiling broadly. Zara, I'm so glad you're here. I wanted you to meet my daughter. She gestured to a young woman beside her. Sarah just graduated from business school. She's going to help me expand the restaurant chain. I'm so happy for you, Zara said. And she meant it. Rebecca had not only recovered her restaurants but had rebuilt her relationship with her children, who finally understood that their mother hadn't been weak or foolish, she had been victimized by professionals. Amanda Sterling was next, looking healthier and happier than Zara had ever seen her. "The trust fund is completely restored," she said. "And I've started my own foundation to help children of fraud victims understand what happened to their families." Carol Williams had used her recovered assets to rebuild her late husband's construction company, but with a new focus on affordable housing. "We broke ground on our first development last month," she told Zara. 30 homes for families who can't afford the down payment on traditional mortgages. As the evening progressed, Zara heard story after story of recovery, resilience, and renewal. Women who had been broken by Blake and Patricia's crimes had rebuilt their lives stronger than before. During her speech, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them all together. "A year and a half ago, I thought my story was about loss," she said. "I thought it was about being abandoned, betrayed, and nearly destroyed by someone I trusted. Tonight, I know my story is about something else entirely." She looked out at the audience: fraud victims, their families, law enforcement officers, advocates, and supporters. "My story is about the power of truth. About the strength that comes from refusing to be ashamed of being victimized. About the justice that's possible when people stand together instead of suffering alone." She paused, thinking about her father, about the choices that had led to this moment. "The money that made me a target for criminals has become a tool for helping other victims. The betrayal that nearly broke me has become the foundation for connections that have made me stronger. The worst thing that happened to me has become the source of the best work I've ever done." After the gala, Zara and Jonathan walked through the gardens behind the mansion. It was a beautiful evening, warm and clear, with stars visible despite the city lights. "Any regrets?" Jonathan asked. "About what?" "About not taking the easy path. You could have given Blake some money, avoided all the drama, kept your life private. And let him continue hurting other women?" "No. No regrets." They sat on a bench overlooking the city. Zara thought about the teacher she had been 18 months ago, scared, struggling, alone. That woman felt like a different person now. "What's next?" Jonathan asked. "The foundation is expanding to help victims of all kinds of financial fraud, not just romance scams. We're opening offices in 5 new states. And," she smiled, "I'm going back to school." "For what?" "Law school. I want to be able to represent victims myself, not just fund their legal cases." Jonathan laughed. "You know that means 3 years of studying, internships, bar exams?" "I know. But I also know I can do it. I've learned I'm stronger than I thought." "What about teaching?" "I'll keep teaching part-time. I love those kids too much to give it up completely." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Jonathan asked the question Zara had been expecting. "Have you heard from him?" She knew he meant Blake. "He writes letters sometimes. From prison. The prison psychologist says it's part of his therapy, writing to his victims." "Do you read them?" "No. I have them forwarded to the foundation's legal team in case he says anything that violates the restraining order. But I don't read them." "Do you ever think about what he might be saying?" Zara considered the question. "I used to wonder. I used to think maybe he was genuinely sorry, maybe he had learned something, maybe he understood the damage he caused. And now I don't care. His remorse, his understanding, his rehabilitation, none of that is about me. It's about him. My healing isn't dependent on his apology." A shooting star streaked across the sky above them. Jonathan pointed it out and they both made wishes. "What did you wish for?" he asked. "That's supposed to be secret." "Come on. We're both lawyers. We know how to keep confidential information." Zara smiled. "I wished for 5 more years. 5 more years of what?" 5 more years of this. Of feeling strong. Of doing work that matters. Of being with someone who sees me as a partner, not a target." She looked at him. "What did you wish for?" "I wish that you would say yes when I ask you to marry me next year." "Next year? I want to do this right. Court you properly, meet your friends, get to know your students. Prove that I'm not interested in your money or your foundation or your fame. Just you." Zara felt her heart flutter but also a moment of panic. "Jonathan, I don't know if I can ever trust marriage again. Blake destroyed my faith in. Blake destroyed your faith in him. Not in marriage. Not in love. Not in yourself." Jonathan took her hand. "You've spent the last year proving that you're not a victim. That you're not broken. That you're not afraid. Don't let him take marriage away from you too." She squeezed his hand. "Ask me again in a year." "I will." They walked back to the house holding hands. Tomorrow, Zara would go back to her classroom, back to her students, back to the work that had always given her purpose. Next week, she would start law school classes. Next month, the foundation would open its new offices. And someday maybe she would walk down an aisle toward a man who loved her for who she was, not what she had. Blake Morrison Marcus Thompson was serving his 15-year sentence in a federal prison in Texas. Patricia Morrison was in a women's facility in Arizona. The fraud network they had built was completely dismantled. But Zara Thompson was free. Free from their manipulation, free from their threats, free from the fear and shame they had tried to impose on her. She was wealthy, but more importantly she was strong. She was successful, but more importantly she was kind. She was famous, but more importantly she was authentic. She was everything her father had hoped she would become. Everything she had always had the potential to be. Everything Blake had tried to prevent her from realizing. As she turned off the lights in her mansion, her home now, not just her inheritance, Zara smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new ways to help people who needed it. But tonight, she was simply a woman who had survived betrayal, sought justice, and built something beautiful from the ashes of her broken trust. Tonight that was enough.